What is up, everybody? This is Brandon Lilly here with the Be Legendary podcast by Sornex. Today, I am honored to be sitting with Coach Scott Caulfield, the Arm Farm King. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, I think as far as coaches go, you're about as good as it gets, and I mean, you're doing a lot of great work right now in so many different areas. Why don't you tell the people that might not know exactly who you are? I was actually going to highlight this. I was looking at your bio, and it's just it's a pretty lengthy bio. So I'll let you kind of narrow it down and pare down the big stuff and let everybody know what you are. But you're the NSCA director of human performance, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple titles. So my
Yeah.
former title, yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, it's a unique position. So being at headquarters, I am the head strength coach, strength and conditioning coach, and I am what we call a coaching education manager. So, we have a 6,000 square foot facility that people may have seen on Instagram or some of our social media. So I oversee that facility and all of our interns and athletes that we train here. And then, the other part, which is arguably the biggest part, is almost literally everything and anything that the NSCA has to do with strength and conditioning coaches from youth and high school through professional levels. If it's an event, a podcast, a clinic, of building a strategic partnership with professional organizations or, NCAA and different coaches out there, that falls in my wheelhouse. So, I think it's really unique, and it's definitely changed a lot since I started almost a decade ago
Right.
to grow into this. But I think the NSCA has kind of recommitted, and I think people have seen that, that we are really, making better efforts to support strength and conditioning coaches. In the last 5 years, I think it's very, very visible.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a credit not only to the NSCA but to the work that you do. I mean, being with Sornex and traveling around and talking to people and whatnot. I mean, your name is certainly a name that comes up as one in high regard. How long you've been with the NSCA for 10 years? How long have you been in Colorado?
So I've been almost 10. It's about 8.5 years. Yeah. So I moved here in January 2011 for the job at the NSCA. I was at Dartmouth College working as a strength coach with football, rugby, men's, women's swimming. I was the NSCA Vermont State Director at that time. And I had an opportunity, I'd been out to Colorado, I'd seen the headquarters, and I was in a position in my life that I could kind of make a jump or take a jump. I was single, I didn't have stuff, I was younger.
Right.
When I took the opportunity, when I to put the feelers out, and got lucky and got a job. But when I started here in January 2011, I was working in a cube in the back of the education department, wearing a button-down shirt every day and nice pants, and really questioning why I made the decision to leave Dartmouth to come here. And about 6 months after I had been here, the guy who was in charge of the performance center left, and I got promoted. And it was, I think, right place, right time, right experience. I had all the ducks in a row I needed. And like I said, I've kind of ran with it, and it's definitely changed since that, since June or July of 2011, my position has changed immensely.
Absolutely. And I think I talked to a lot of these younger coaches, specifically assistants, interns, and whatnot. And the one thing that I keep coming back to is exactly what you just touched on is this worth it? I think people get excited by the fact of working with a big university program or the Division I schools and whatnot. And even at that level, there's a bit of a grueling nature to the work that we do as strength coaches. But what do you say to somebody, that's really out there struggling with it right now? Because, you have to hear these war stories of what's going on, and, pay isn't so great for a lot of assistants.
Right.
The hours are brutal, hard on the family, it's hard on the heart. You know what I mean? It's hard on the individual. So for somebody who's standing on the other side of that, from the education side, and also having done it for so long, what do you have to say to somebody out there that really is struggling right now?
Yeah, one of the things that I say a lot to a lot of people, and I hope eventually I become known for saying it, is don't give up what you want most for what you want now. And I think,
Right.
I was doing 3 or 4 different jobs. I've told our interns multiple times that when I came to work at NSCA in 2011, I was 41 years old at the time, and this is the first time I've ever only had one job. Um, I did
Nice.
whatever it took. I worked at a private facility. I worked at Dartmouth. I worked some side hustle bartending jobs to do what I needed to do. But I, really loved working with athletes and training in that collegiate setting. And part of going to work here at NSCA headquarters, I had kind of, like a lot of people, get frustrated at different things. And my buddy Ron McKeefer says it all the time too. He's like, don't complain if you're not willing to step up to the plate and do something about it. And I
Right.
figured there was no better way than trying to get a job at the headquarters and seeing if I could make an impact with, how we do resources and treat coaches and, support this profession.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is you just have to stay committed. And I mean, I look back on some of my stuff and, you know, I guess I don't want to claim myself as a success story, but I'm very happy with the direction my life is going and in contrast to where I've been at times in my life. But I think that's just a part of living is, you know, you have to sacrifice for what you want. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest generational gap between a guy your age, my age, and then somebody coming right out of college. Is you probably look at me as a little bit different than your age group, and I look at these guys completely different
Right.
that are younger than me, and it just seems like when I was really trying to make my name as a power lifter, it was 2 or 3 jobs, none of them really that great as far as pay. They were manageable from a time schedule kind of deal, but I don't know what people expect, you know, just to
Right.
think that, oh, I'm going to be a head coach one day just because I have this degree or I have, you know, this last name. I don't know what people were expecting. And I mean, I look at you as a guy who you've just navigated the field the best that you can, and you've really carved yourself out not only as a force with the NSCA, but as an individual too. I mean, how much do you feel like the individuality is lost on a lot of these coaches? Do you think that they should hold on to it, or do you think they should always try to be themselves?
I mean, I think there's such I guess, a fine line between being yourself and being what, standing up for what you are, or being a self promoter. And I mean, I think as coaches, we're in such a servant leadership role, that you really have to be in it, because of the reasons that you care about being a servant leader and doing it for other people, and not really caring at the end of the day if you get any credit for anything.
Right.
I think, where people run into trouble is when they just want to be on that sideline or wear that whatever logo it is on their chest for the wrong reason. Those are the people that are probably going to get a lot more frustrated and have a lot harder time
Right.
than the people that, really aren't going to care who, if you ever get a award or some sort of attaboy. I mean,
Right.
probably, the best coaches that we don't know about are out there coaching in the trenches. They're not at the conferences speaking and on social media. They're just coaching and doing their thing and helping their athletes get better.
So does that pose like a little bit of a paradox for you? You know, I mean, I I look at it too. You know, for myself and other lifters and whatnot. Um, there were the days of like you just kept your mouth shut, you didn't share your secrets, and you just put your head down and kept going. But like you said, obviously you run a conference with the NSCA and you have people speaking there, and you know there are these hidden gems out there that are just on the field, whistle in their mouth, you know, stopwatch in hand, just out there grinding away and making a name for themselves in their community. But do you feel like at some point coaches get a pass? And I don't want to put you in a bad situation, but coaches get a pass because they have been at this school or they do have this name, and really they're not bringing it to the table like somebody that hasn't gotten that chance yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, the kind of highlight of strength and conditioning coaches, and we're seeing more more and more kind of promotion and different things. And I mean, it would be nice to be able to highlight some of these people who, might not get that. Aren't at a Power 5 school or different things. But, I don't know. I think those people might also just not want that recognition and not want that limelight.
Right.
It'd be great to be able to, get them involved more though, and find out what they're doing and sharing. And I do think that's kind of what makes the NSCA unique with, the real volunteer based, um, you know, committees and state director stuff that we have, and regional, and all that chance to get involved, as a young coach, and kind of move up through the ranks and be on different committees. I think that's a kind of a unique, um, aspect of the organization, and that it's a knock on us, on the organization too, that they say, well, there's researchers and people who teach classes and personal trainers, and but like, I mean, I think that's the coolest part about the organization, is it's the diversity of all of the membership that makes it so cool.
Right. Yeah, and I think from having been at the conferences and stuff, there's, you know, Sornex is involved with several of these companies or these conferences and affiliates and whatnot. I mean, I have no problem saying that the NSCA is a standout just because of it feels very professional, but it also feels a little more relaxed. I've always appreciated that aspect from it, where coaches will be speaking one minute, and it just seems like when they come off, they're just so excited to speak to you as a one to one. And I mean, obviously, I'm tied to the Sornex booth, so there's some recognition there too as well. But yeah, I just think what you guys got going on is a really good thing. But I don't want to harp too much on. I don't want to make an NSCA podcast. I want to get to know you a little
Yeah.
better and share that as well. What really excites you about training now? How long have you been training, and what is the evolution to where you are now?
Training myself or training
Yeah, training for
other people?
yourself.
Yeah, man, I mean, I'm one of those guys now that's coming up on 50, and I'm, I'm like
Well, you look
thinking back.
awesome. I mean, truly,
Yeah, right.
for 50 years old. I
Appreciate
mean,
it.
I think
Trying to
guys like you are redefining what 50 is, right?
totally, yeah, 100%. But the only reason that's happened is because because I've strength trained for these last 2+ decades. I mean, I really got into lifting like my second year in college. I met some other people that were into lifting, and they kind of, I kind of followed them around the gym. But then I wasn't a great student, so after my second year of college, I was not getting any more financial aid or any support because of my grades, and so I joined the Navy. And I really, that's where my like getting interested in lifting and really getting the kind of bug to train um, hit. And I also played a lot of basketball at that time, so I saw the correlation between athletic performance and lifting. So it was kind of clicking, even though I didn't know, that was going to be a thing for me. But went back to school, and then later down the road, I got involved in um, strongman powerlifting, as a strength coach,
Yeah.
because I just wanted to be more, well versed in the different types of lifts and stuff like that. And I also do say that strongman ruined my basketball career, though. That's a given.
Because you just got so invested in it.
Yeah, you stop playing, you lose those fine motor skills, the touch,
Yeah.
and getting put on 20 pounds or so, and you definitely could carry 300 pounds in each hand farmer's walk, but my jumper was not where it used to be.
What
So
do you think it is, about the psychology of lifters, that gravitate towards strongman or powerlifting? I mean, I know that as a powerlifter, you're not going to be able to go out here and run a marathon every day and then be an apex type athlete. But, I was talking about on a post I made just the other day. I went skiing for the first time in a really long time, especially since my knee injury. But I mean, this was literally one of the things that I loved more than anything was skiing. From the first time I went down a hill, it was like, man, there's something really special about this, and I connect to it. But as I got a little more invested, and I'm talking, I wasn't even at a regional level at this point. I just decided that I was going to scrap it, so I could start powerlifting more seriously. I mean, that's one of the biggest regrets that I have is that I put so much stuff to the side for this sport. Do you
Mhm.
think it can be done? I mean, do you think guys just have it all wrong and that we can do a better job as people to enjoy our lives, or do you think it's always going to be this like struggle of what you have to give up to be the best, or at least the best that you can be?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're definitely going to give up certain aspects of some things if you really want to, make the serious improvement in whatever that might be. If it's a sport like powerlifting or weightlifting or strongman, other stuff outside of that, the skiing or mountain biking or things like that are definitely going to, they're not going to help you toward the goal of lifting more weight or doing stuff like that and being super strong or super big just because they're not conducive. I think you kind of realize at some point, and maybe it does just take getting older and getting a little more perspective of what you want your life to be. But I mean, I tell people now that you look at my Instagram, it's basically like lifting, skiing, mountain biking, and dogs.
Yeah,
And like that's kind of where I prioritize everything. And I definitely, still train, 2 to 4 times a week and try and keep consistent with that. But like at the end of the day, I'd rather be able to go outside and ski and mountain bike and not really care,
yeah.
how much I can
Well,
lift
and I think
anymore.
that's interesting that you say that too, because I was actually talking about on another podcast through the course of my injuries and whatnot. I kept trying to come back to the barbell because that was the one measure of how good I was doing relative to what I'd done for the last 15, 16 years. Um, and it just became this thing where I knew that the barbell was breaking me down. It was probably
Right.
leading to the recurring infection because I was pushing too hard and the tissue was starting to break down. But when I finally decided that I've got to get better, like and I truly mean better, not just stronger, it was going to have to take an exodus from the barbell. I had to get outside. I had to hike. I had to get on the rower. I had to get on a bike and ride. And I don't know if it was the combination of just feeling better and losing weight that made me so much happier, or if it was the fact that I was outside. I was wind going through my what little hair I have left. We'll say my beard. Wind going through my beard on a bike, or conquering that 100,000 meter row in a day. It just felt like a totally different set of happiness than I had ever felt lifting with the barbell. Is that kind of what you're feeling as well, or do you just think that's
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I heard you say it on a podcast before, at some point down that road, you didn't even really enjoy
hmm
powerlifting anymore, and I think we can get, because coaches especially are so kind of A-type, super focused, we can get really dialed in on whatever it is that we're involved in and really, forget about these other things that might actually make our life better, which, I mean, being outside, being in nature, there's a lot to be said, for all of the different aspects of that,
yeah.
from physiology to mental health to all the above. So I just think you know, it's easy because we get so focused and we want to be the best and we're competitive and we probably played sports and then, powerlifting or strongman becomes our sport and then we're trying to excel at it. So, you just get that laser focus. And again, I was never a champion powerlifter or strongman, but like I knew, that I wanted to be as good as I possibly could at it. Um, and and then, if you throw injuries in there and different things that happen, those certainly, I think, at some point make you kind of rethink, like, wait a minute, what was I really doing this
Absolutely.
for? Like, is this really?
So, talking about skiing, how much are you skiing every year? I mean, I was talking to a lady this weekend, said she used to ski 150 days a year. They lived in Reno and they go to Mount Rose or over to Lake Tahoe and some of those different mountains. How much access do you have to the mountain, and how much time do you have for
That's awesome. I wish I had 150 days.
it?
I'm getting a little over 20 each year so far that I've been here, which is pretty darn good.
Absolutely.
I, I I really do kind of tell people like my calendar tends to be pretty loaded up in the spring and summer with all events and stuff, and I really try and do as little traveling for work as possible between January and March because that's prime ski season. So if I can, we'll be out on the hill. And being in Colorado, we're hour and a half to 2 hours from some of the best mountains in the country, and got into backcountry skiing last year. So that's where you have like they call it a touring setup where your heel is free, and you basically have these things you put on your skis that are kind of sticky. They're called skins, and then you skin up the hill, and then you pull the skins off, lock down your binding, and ski down. That's been an amazing way to talk about a workout. One, going uphill, skiing uphill is no joke. But you're when those types of skinning and touring stuff, it's literally you and whoever you're with, and that's it. There's no people, there's no crowd, there's no lines. It is like truly out in nature. It's incredible, and you have to be safe and realize that avalanche danger is a real thing, and be pretty aware and trained about that.
You ever had any real scares on the mountain?
Nope, not yet. So I'm hoping not.
I actually, so Glenn Eberly, the guy that founded Eberly Stock Bags, he was a biathlon, and that was his motivation to start those bags. But is that the same kind of ski that you would use, like the one where I've seen the heel lift in some of those type of competitions, but I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, it would function the same way, except those guys you would use for biathlon wouldn't lock back down. So it would almost be like your regular downhill ski, but just the binding has a little switch basically that allows your heel to come up, and there's a couple little risers that you can actually put up you can turn and put under your heel, so that when you're going up really steep stuff, you have a little bit of.
Do you not slide back down?
Right, and because you have the skins on the bottom, you don't slide down. Crap. So you're right there. You tend to try not to go straight up the hill, because depending on how steep it is, that would be hard. But you'll do a kind of a crisscross across the slope. And there's even the best, I think, part about living in Colorado Springs too is we have more accessibility to mountains right here in our city, basically. You got the Pikes Peak right there, and I've skied Pikes Peak, which is a 14,000 foot mountain, the last 4 years. Every year in May or June, actually, they get more snow up there in May, so we go up and we can ski that. And there's some other kind of smaller hills that if we get enough snow in town, you can run over there and skin up kind of like a fire road and ski down it, just kind of like a big green trail. But it's literally 10 minutes outside of your door, which is pretty amazing.
Incredible. And that's one of the things that I think on the East Coast we get really spoiled, talking to guys that go hunting. Or do you do any hunting? Okay.
I don't.
So like here, we're primarily whitetail, turkey, duck. You might do some bear hunting out on the East Coast. I went out to Salt Lake City last year for the Cam Haines 5K trail run in Park City, I think it was, or maybe it was Bluebird. But anyway, it was like a 3.5, 4 mile trail run, and that was when I was pretty much running every single day. And I got out into those mountains, and oh my God, man! Like the first 400 feet of this race was like 300 feet of climb. It was intense, and the lactic acid built up in my lungs and so on. Do you feel like training out there has optimized your training just because of the altitude and prepared you for all that? Because I don't think that there was any way I could have prepared for it until I got in it.
Right. No, it's wild. Yeah. We know that from a training and adaptation standpoint, that being at altitude's a benefit. But we just got back from Whistler, British Columbia. We were there at the end of March for a ski trip, and we went mountain biking one day, and I don't know what the altitude is. It's significantly lower here though. We rode 19 miles, and I felt like $1 million, man. If I rode 19 miles here in Colorado with the people we usually ride with, I would be wrecked and kind of be like, moving pretty slow, and I felt great. And I'm
Yeah.
like, wow.
How
I
much?
mean, it was altitude
How hard
effect
are
for
you
sure.
training now? I mean, like you talk about the guys that you ride with. I know some 50-year-olds, specifically cyclists, that are just insane. I mean, are you pushing like that, or are you just kind of happy to still be training, happy to be training in one piece, and you know,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so I have I'm going to need a hip replacement at some point in the next year or so. My hip is bone on bone and severe arthritis in my left hip, and who knows? I think it's just wear and tear, and nothing acute ever happened to it. So I've been kind of dealing with that the last couple of years. But my girlfriend is a big mountain biker, and so she does a bunch of kind of races and different stuff. She did one called the Grand Traverse last year, which goes from Aspen to Crested Butte
wow,
over two mountain passes, 40 something miles. It took her 8.5 hours to finish it. But I get roped into training rides and stuff like that. So, I'm definitely not signing up for any competitions or things like that. But the people that we kind of ride with, and I do it more for fun. So I'll be like, all right, I know where we're going. I'll see you at the, if you stop, or I'll see you at the end. Or from time to time, if I get far enough ahead, I'll try and crank as hard as I can and see if I can lose them so they can't
yeah,
catch me. So it's definitely more for fun for
that's
me than
awesome.
anything.
You
And that's really because of my hip. That's kind of my leg training more than
right?
anything. I mean, I'll do some other single leg stuff and some posterior chain that I can do that doesn't bug my hip. But for the most part, my leg training is mountain
Was that
biking and
kind of a
skiing.
was that a difficult detachment for you to stop squatting and doing some of the heavier compound movements?
It's been tough, man. It's been a really tough mental shift, to not be able to do that stuff. And um, but I mean, I think, at the same time that all of this like hip stuff came up, my good buddy Aaron Osmus came out with Dr. Jacked, and kind of told me that I was an inspiration for him for that program. And then he came out with the Coach Caulfield's Arm Farm, and his programming really rejuvenated my training,
Right.
totally different way at a point when I really needed it. And it's been such a great friendship that he and I have developed over the past, 3 years or 4 years, and with all the stuff and kind of we definitely have fun with it on social media too, which is fantastic, and keeps it really fun and
How
interesting.
invested? I mean, Osmus is an awesome dude, double wide, AA as we all call him and whatnot. But how invested do you get in these coaches? Working with the NSCA to kind of bring it back to that when you have a guy that is really capable, and like Sornex, I think was a good relief for Aaron for a while to get out and kind of separate himself from that coaching world, and then also understand the coaching world from a different perspective from our side, and then to go back into it and land that job at USC. I mean, is massive. So from the NSCA side or your personal side, how much are you really looking at guys thinking, man, I want to help them land these jobs. I want to make sure that they're in a good fit, or is it just something that's not really your protocol?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think his story is fantastic to kind of come out and do different stuff and then be able to jump right back into it like he didn't miss a day. I mean, I think that's such a great story that we can be able to tell. And I mean, one of my kind of personal mission statements that I tell people is that I really do want to try and help increase the amount of strength and conditioning jobs and help people get those jobs. So being like kind of the liaison to strength and conditioning coaches here, I really try and be a conduit or an asset to people who are looking for jobs, people who have jobs that are looking for quality people who'll be a good fit. And I think that's been, again, another really great aspect and part that I love the most about my job is to try and help these people, find the right fit and find the next thing that they
Right.
want to be doing.
Well, and I think that's important too to know that they have that kind of asset there with you, or as the NSCA, and that's something we're trying to do at Sornex too. Is just find guys, because we're a part of that mill of coaches will say, "Hey, man, I lost a job," or schools will contact us and say, "Hey, if you know anybody And I just think there's an obligation to the craft, especially if you've been a coach yourself. You just want to look out for good people and look out for people that take care of you as well. And I think you guys do an awesome job of that. So it's really cool to see Osmus get that job, um, because I know he was really dedicated to being the best coach that he could be. And I just think that window when he was working with Sornex was like, it just made him even more hungry for the job, like just being excited to go back into the
Yeah.
field and hard charge at it. But as sitting in your position, that's kind of where I'm going with this is, do you ever just miss the grind? Do you ever miss the day-to-day stuff? Because I know you do a lot there at the NSCA compound, but do you ever miss building and crafting your own program at a university?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely probably that was the biggest adjustment. It was just not being embedded that long. Although I mean when I first got here in 2011, the main team that I've trained from 2011 to 2015 was Colorado
Right.
College hockey, and they kind of train right next door. Their ice hall is right next door to us, so it was a perfect fit. And so I was still very embedded with that team. Went to the games, went on a couple road trips if they wanted me to at different times. But again, as the bigger picture stuff has evolved, one of the reasons for me stepping down from training those guys was just the bigger picture stuff. But the best thing that happened out of that was they created a new position at Colorado College for a hockey strength and conditioning coach. Um, and so that is really, I feel like, my true mission. But definitely, I mean, the best part too about being here is my office is in the weight room, so I can walk into the weight room at any time and get my fill of training athletes and being around athletes. And we just have neat things that pop up out of nowhere that I probably, if I was in a university setting, I wouldn't get the opportunities to
Right.
do. So 2014, the U.S. Paralympic sled hockey team came here and did their training camp with us, and I got to train those guys before they went to Sochi and won a gold medal. And last summer, we had the Chinese national team for short track speed skating come spend 8 weeks with us, and they were kind of in between strength coaches, so I got to program for them and run their program for the whole summer. So there's the things like that that pop up I would never expect. But it happens, on a pretty regular basis. So again, it's pretty neat to be able to keep your coaching skills up, um, even though I'm not
Right.
on the floor as much as most strength
Is
coaches
it
are
hard for
probably.
you to even imagine that you've worked with Olympic level athletes? I mean, I look at some of the opportunities that I've had and the athletes that I've gotten to work with or just be around, and it almost doesn't seem real. I mean, when you were growing up, did you have any idea that you would have the level of success that you've had?
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, I think about that all the time. I'm like, man, I'm just a little guy from Vermont, one of the smallest states and smallest towns. There's 34 kids in my graduating high school class. I wasn't even a good student,
Right.
in my undergrad. And like some days it's like, is this real? Like, how did
Right.
I end up here?
Oh, I get it for sure. I mean, that's kind of the story of my class. My original high school was 30, I want to say 36 or 38 graduates. And, I tell this story sometimes too. Whenever I went to California for a competition once, my papa told me that, you might as well be going to the moon because California just seemed like such an impossibility. But I think for
Yeah,
a lot of these young coaches and whatnot, I think the story that you'll hear if you kind of erode the highlights and the low times away is just staying consistent. Just really pushing forward even when it doesn't seem like forward is possible. But I mean, what do you point to as your big break? Like, was it just a lucky chance? I mean, you talked a little bit about kind of finding that at the NSCA, but I mean, even before that, to get into coaching altogether.
yeah. I mean, I think working at Dartmouth helped me immensely with just getting that collegiate experience and working with the football program, and that kind of came up. I was working at a private facility, and the football coach had actually reached out to the owner of the gym that I worked at because they were classmates at Dartmouth back in the day, and they just were looking for some extra help. And so I got the opportunity to volunteer with the football team, and that was my first real experience in the real quote unquote real collegiate setting. As I volunteered with the football program for that whole first year, before they saw my that I was going to stick around, that I was dedicated to it and passionate and decent at coaching, and that I was a good influence for the guys. So that was, I think that was really a turning point, is that volunteering opportunity that I took every aspect to be as serious as possible, whether it be filling up water bottles at 5:30 in the morning, or putting all the barbells back at the right height afterwards.
Yeah.
It's just like, and I actually ran into the Dartmouth football coach at DIA at the airport when I was coming back from a trip in February. It was so great. It was kind of funny because those little elevators that the roller bags come up on. And so it was a huge cluster. People are just standing around, and so I just jump in and I start pulling everyone's bag off and setting it out in front like the airport staff. And so I'm just putting bags up, pulling their handles up for everybody that's waiting in line. And then like the last one was him. I look up and he's like, "Scott." I'm like, "Coach." It's just wild. He's like, "Of course." He's like, "You'd be the guy handing everybody's bag off here." He's like, "It was wild."
Are you looking forward to Summer Strong?
I am. I'm excited for it. Been a couple of years off, so definitely looking forward. Hopefully, we bring in the NSCA coaching podcast out there and get some for ours.
So
as
what
well.
what are you trying to accomplish with that podcast? I mean, are you just trying to highlight coaches and talk to them and get their story out there, or what is your focus with that?
Yeah, I think our podcast filled a niche that the NSCA didn't have. We do with peer reviewed journals and all the science and stuff and the conferences. We didn't have a real kind of what you don't learn in school, the things you wish you knew, way to talk to coaches. And that was where I think, the success of our podcast kind of has really helped out the organizations, strength and conditioning coaches, especially, that, one of our taglines is it's what you wish you knew but didn't learn in school. And it's the stuff. We're not talking about sets and reps and periodization programs and protocols. It's entirely about the people. And again, kind of like you guys are doing, it's getting to know people, letting people hear about how you got to where you did and what you do and what you wish you didn't do or did do, and really being the personal side of things that help you connect with people. And I get messages, as I'm sure you guys do, on social media and different things every day, just saying how much they like it or how it's helped them, or they were able to reach out to such and such. And I mean, we even have there's a foundation board meeting here going on today, and Brian Schilling, who's a professor at UNLV, who was on one of the recent episodes, was just telling me how many people have reached out to him with questions or just, thanking him, and the amount of students that, prospective students now want to go to UNLV because they heard about what he's like and what he does there. So it's just been a real cool medium that we never even, thought about until we kind of did a survey for the coaches. And that was one of the things that they came back and told us we wanted. So that's big for me too, is that the organization listened to what the coaches wanted, and we were able to deliver it.
Well, you bring up a point that I think on my side of the fence now, I very much appreciate the science and the effort that's given to coaches to understand the body at, especially Australians. I've been talking to a lot of Australians lately, and it seems like their dedication to the science far outweighs their ability to apply, evaluate, and then move forward with the science. You know what I mean? How do you balance that as a guy who's kind of been a lifter, been a strongman, been a power lifter? Like I tell people all the time, I didn't, and I was wrong, but I tell people all the time, I didn't know what a psoas was until like 2014. and then there's like all
Yeah.
this paralyzation by analyzation, or paralysis by
Right.
analysis. And
Yeah.
how much would you like to see coaches free themselves of that? I mean, there's obviously the inclination that you have to have this knowledge, you have to keep learning, but man, it just seems like so many guys stop moving the barbell because they're afraid of all these little nuances that the body gives us as feedback. But I don't think a guy at the top level is sitting here thinking, oh, my VSO is not firing properly. I'm just, not going to lift today.
Right.
How do you
Right.
balance that as a guy who's done
Right.
both?
Yeah. I mean, I think you really have to. I mean, the scientific information is out there, and there's so much that you need to know, but at the same time, that only gets you so far because the what you learn from training yourself, being under a barbell, seeing the physical adaptations because you've trained it, that teaches you more than you'll ever would have learned from reading a book or, doing a master's program. And just being able to apply it. So, I think that's the biggest thing is being able to learn something and then apply it and see how it helps you, is where that's where the successful people and the best coaches I feel are making their
Do you think there's
strides.
any coaches out there that are just purely, anecdotal type evidence guys? I mean, just they've been doing it for 15, 20 years, and they're not going to read a book, they're not going to go to a conference, they're just going to keep doing what they're doing. And do you think that can be successful?
I mean, I'm sure there are. I don't necessarily know any of those people. I think that the people that I gravitate toward are the people who are like-minded and continuously seeking knowledge. And what's the quote, or old adage that there's a difference between having 20 years of experience or 1 year of experience repeated 20
Right.
times. I think as the profession grows, the requirements, whether it be education, certification, experience, the professionalism of the job of being a strength and conditioning coach grows and becomes more and more, um, you know, appreciated. Those types of people aren't going to have a place anymore. If they are still around, they're going to have a really hard time functioning in this world as this profession keeps
Well, I
getting
mean, we're,
better.
we're looking at coaches now making, what's the top this year? 700,000, 725, somewhere in that neighborhood. I mean, do you think that number is justified? Do you think that it should be more? I mean, because the programs are bringing in tons and tons of money at the Division 1 level. I mean, for football especially.
Right.
So, for someone like myself, I'll answer first, so maybe take some of the hot water off you. But I definitely see that just from the scale of money being shifted through the program. Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with a guy making, you know, $700,000 if he's doing that level of work, and I'm sure they're grading him accordingly. But the trickle down to these guys, looking at a Judd Logan, I don't know what Judd Logan makes, but he's got to be arguably one of the best coaches in the country, especially for track. And it's like
Right.
he's kind of remained loyal to the fact that it's a Division 2 school. He's found a place. Um, which do you think is more celebrated or should be more celebrated? The guy that is continuing to push the envelope forward for other coaches to make more money, or a guy like Judd who's like, you know what, I don't need the money to do this. What do you? I don't even know what the question is there really, but I just see such a discrepancy there, um, and
Yeah.
maybe I'm fighting for a guy like Judd a little bit because I think he's so awesome, but how do we balance all this out, and how do we justify what we're doing as coaches and as a university?
Yeah. I mean, well, at first, I think, to kind of answer the first part, I think those coaches that are making those huge salaries, and that whoever it is, that football coach, administrator, whoever that's allowing them to be paid that, sees the value in them being the same level or whatever as the offensive and defensive coordinator. And so if they're showing that kind of value, I think it's fantastic that they're getting paid for it. Yeah. Now, I mean, our golf team is not going to bring in the money that our football team does, you know. So I mean, it's going to be a tough road to have some sort of equality, you know, throughout the entire profession, I think. But I mean, I personally look up to somebody like Judd that's been at a place for as long as they have, you know, more so than someone that's raking in a seven-figure
Right.
contract, you know, because those people are the ones that are dedicated, you know, to being there. And then, you know, there's probably some guys that are going to make that seven figures and have been at that place for 10 or 15 years too. So it's definitely, you know, again, as the profession grows, and it's still a really young profession when you think about it in the realm of, you know, brick masons and bakers and
How long do you think? What do you recognize as the origin of strength coaching? I mean, 70s, 60s.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, I don't really know who the first, you know, I think, you know, you think about like the old time strongman and stuff like that. People I mean, even some of those guys were still kind of freaks. It wasn't really like people wanted to be like that. But, you know, I have to think without knowing real great anecdotal stories that, you know, those guys probably were training people that on the side too, you know, just like all of us have done, you know, and how can I bend those iron rods in half, you know? So, I mean, I'm sure the, you know, initial kind of stages of coaching were from those old time strongman and back into the, you know, like, I mean, when Boyd started at Nebraska, you know, when he was a injured pole vaulter and they told him if anybody gets slower, you're fired. I mean, you know, those days were very real when they thought that training with weights made you slower.
And I mean, that's such a funny thing that you say that because I've heard so many coaches. I was actually, well, I better not say his name, but I was actually talking to a coach last week, and he was talking about that. He literally, in his hiring process, told him, he was like, I guarantee you our guys are going to get weaker on the board because I'm going to ask them to do things a little differently. I'm going to ask them to raise the standard of what they're doing. And I do think that the coaching world, whether it be the head coach or the head strength coach or down to the coordinators or even the interns, we are so market performance based. You know, I don't care if what I'm doing is making this kid a better human and making them a better squatter on a technical level. I just want to see that PR board go up because that's something that we can market and that's something that we can brag about or boast about, you know, publicly. But at what cost, right? At what cost are we doing that? And I mean, that's the meat grinder, so to say. You know, you get how many people become disenfranchised because of that? You know,
right. Yeah, I mean, I know my buddy Jim Davis too with
love Jim, by the way.
Project. He works
fantastic
guy. Cool kids. Great guy. But you know, he always says too that you know, lifting weights doesn't build character or teach life lessons. You know, it's deliberate coaches that teach those life lessons through the weight room. You know, and I just think that's such a key thing to keep in mind because there's plenty of coaches out there that can make people tired, right?
How much do you see of that? Like just the coaching that causes you to cringe a little bit. I mean, do you think that we're in an age now where there's so much, you know, I guess perspective on what other people are doing and what other coaches are doing that if somebody's really doing something ignorant that they're called out upon, or do you think that it just kind of slides under the rug?
It's a double-edged sword a little bit. I mean, there is, because of social media, so much bad stuff or, you know, stuff that you see that you're like, wow, that was bad. But, you know, I think there's some level on the other side of that we might not know enough about what that little snippet of that day or that session was, right? To make a judgment on it without knowing all the other things that go into that. and definitely there's plenty of there's plenty of gym fail videos that you can go down the rabbit hole on watching that we
Yeah.
can all agree are bad, and someone was bad for doing it or allowing it. But I think, like I said, that sometimes people might post something and not we just see that little snippet and we're like, oh, that was horrible. This guy must be really bad, and we don't know the
Well,
full
I think
story.
I think that's true on both sides of the fence too. Somebody can have that accidental genius in a 1 minute clip, and then they're kind of falling apart the rest of the world. And I think that's the danger of social media is that we create these heroes or these idols through these snippets, like you said, and then it's like, oh, the background check comes out on them, and but it also
Right,
works the other
right.
way too. I mean, we can damn somebody so quickly, for a mistake or a misjudgment, but we don't know the whole story. And I think you really touched on that. I mean, perfectly, because it's something that I've experienced personally. I'm sure that at some level you've experienced personally. Where you said something, and because you're constrained to 15 seconds or a minute, you don't get to exacerbate your idea or your thought to a level that leads to complete understanding. But man, it's a strange world to navigate the social media thing. I mean, I wouldn't want to
Yeah,
be a coach at that level just for fear of like, well, I wouldn't say fear, but just the scrutiny. Can you imagine? I mean, God Almighty!
yeah,
Like at some of these levels,
yeah,
like at an Alabama or at a Georgia or at any of these powerhouse football
yeah,
schools. Well, and even Kentucky,
yeah,
we're kind of turning the ship around there with football, but basketball, the standard there is so high. I mean, I don't know that I would post
yeah.
anything if I was Rob Harris. You know, like just keep
Right,
my
right.
keep my shit
No,
to
I totally
myself and like
agree.
not let anybody see it. But
Totally,
I mean,
totally
so
agree.
to kind of shift gears here as we wind down, what sets you on fire? What keeps you going right now? What is your torch to bear? I guess so to say at this point in your life, you're almost 50 years old, or you are 50 years old, and almost.
Almost. Don't
Oh,
give
I'm
me
just
there
trying to
just
age you
yet.
like a fine wine, man. I'm trying to give you, I'm trying to give you a little credit, but what? How intensely are you looking at life, and how intensely are you living right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the best, decade of my life right now, and I'm only looking forward to the years ahead. I feel like I'm doing something that I am passionate about, and I feel good about helping make an impact on an entire profession and help the coaches that I interact with and other members of the NSCA or people that are interested in getting involved. I'm just fired up about that on a regular basis. I never get up in the morning and am dreading or I'm like, oh man, I have to go to work today. Like that hasn't happened in well over
Yeah,
a decade. Um, it, and just like I said, being in Colorado too, and having the other things that keep my mental health and physical health in the right places, and keep me passionate about life and what I do. Is just so great. I think that, like I said, I'm really fortunate and grateful to be in the position I'm in, where I can feel like I help other people. And I don't, I'm not out. Hopefully, people don't think I'm out, trying to get, credit
right,
for it and
right.
promote myself.
Well, and
You know,
you touched on a little bit of the mind body there. You're doing things for your mentality. Do you do any kind of meditation or any of that kind of stuff?
yeah, I do. I've been into meditation for a little while now. I actually went on I went on a full day silent retreat a few months ago. There's a meditation center here in town, and they have some weekly stuff. I've done like their kind of intro to meditation course, which is like a 1 week at a time, kind of 4 week thing. And I did a full day silent meditation, which was unbelievable. And it's just, and I'm not enlightened
Right.
by any means. I have to remember to meditate on a regular basis, but I know my buddy Joe Ken, has been a big proponent of meditation for a long time, and he states pretty clearly that helped him get through his firing when he got fired
Right.
at Louisville. And I think there's and obviously it's coming, right? There's a lot of promotion of it. It's pretty kind of hot
Right.
topic, if you will. I'm glad I kind of got in on it before it became a hot topic, and realized that it could help me, be more present or calm. And like I said, if you ask my girlfriend, she'd be like, "You're on your phone too much." So, need, I need to remind myself just like anybody else. But it's been
Well,
a huge
yeah,
asset. I
I'm
think
glad to
that.
hear that, man, because
Um,
that's something that I really, really point to. You know, I won't even say meditation, but just like putting the phone down, turning the TV off, and that just kind of leads to my own thoughts, wandering. And I drive a lot too. I love music and I love podcasts, but especially in the mornings, I tend to do it more then than at night. But I'll turn the radio off in the truck and just drive and just think. And I know that there are people who hear the word meditation and they think all these different stereotypes or cliches about it. Just try turning your radio off. Try putting your phone down for a little
yeah,
bit. Don't answer the text messages. Turn your notifications off. I mean, how many times do you scroll through Instagram and it's posts that you've already seen over and over and over and over and over? They're going to be there
yeah,
at the end of the day or at the front of
yeah,
the day, and most of it is just mindless stuff anyway. We're trying to occupy time. So I've really dedicated to trying to spend some time understanding myself a little bit better, and I think that's one of the greatest endeavors that I've ever done because you know how can you really how can anyone ever know you if you don't know yourself? How can you ever love yourself, or how can anyone ever love you if you don't love yourself? That those kind of questions came
for
to
sure.
mind. So I think it's awesome, and I think it's really cool to hear you talking about that too, because you're obviously a guy that I respect, and I wanted your insight on that. So it's very cool. What what books are you
Yeah.
reading right now, if any, or what's the last book you read?
Uh, you know, I'm teaching a class for University of Colorado Springs. So we've been using this strength and conditioning for sports performance. But it was by Ian Jeffries and Jeremy Moody. But I've been listening to a lot
Yep.
of books too. I actually have. So I've got two books I'm reading that are sitting by my bed. One is called How to Break Up
Yeah.
with Your Phone.
Yep.
I can't remember who wrote it, but it's pretty big. It's super simple. She's got a lot of like really basic stuff. It's like a multiple day process, and it's kind of there's a little bit of funny stuff in
Yep.
it. It's really great. So I've been reading that, and I've been reading a book by a former Navy SEAL named Jack
Oh yeah.
Carr, Terminal List, which is it's not a true story, but so it's been really cool. And then I've been listening to some audiobooks. So I got a library card from the Pikes Peak Library, and they have audiobooks you can check out. And so I'm a pretty big fan of like military books and stuff like that. Um, so I'm listening to a book called
Oh,
Outlaw
okay. Cool.
Platoon right now. Really,
Are you
really
familiar with
cool. Yeah.
Carlos Hathcock? Okay, so
I'm not.
he was really kind of one of the first guys to bring the rise of the American sniper as a as an
Oh yeah.
anti
Okay.
uh, as a defense against the opposition and whatnot. He kind of rose to fame in the Vietnam War, but he's got a great book, or actually a couple of great books, and ended up sitting beside a guy on a plane going out to Reno that actually served with him and was taught by him in the Marine sniper school that he created. So
Oh
I hope I'm
wow.
saying those terms correctly. I think it was the sniper school, but I do know that he did work with all he did work with the Army, he did work with the Rangers, he did work with the Marines as well, just because he was so prolific as a sniper. And to hear these guys talk, I mean, such a fascinating world that is really dying off every day. We're losing these veterans at such a rapid
Yeah.
rate from World War II. And didn't the last World War II veteran die very recently, I think? If not, if,
Right. I
if
think
he didn't
so.
die, it's very, very small numbers left. But I mean, this whole war, I think we still don't understand war as a complex. And I think the only way to understand it is through the eyes of these guys. And I think that's pretty cool. I'll send you a couple books that I've read that have really kind of hit home with me on a bunch of different topics related to war. But last thing I want to ask you, um, if you were to point to any person in your life that really motivated you to be the best that you could be, who would that be and why?
That's pretty easy one for me. My mom was a basketball coach and an educator. She coached girls basketball, and I kind of grew up getting drug around to the gym for practice and stuff like that. And you know, realizing far later down the road how much she sacrificed, and how little we probably really had. And but I, at that same time, never lacked anything or
Right.
wanted, or needed anything. I probably wanted a lot of stuff. I was a little jerk back in the day, but she was huge. And her and my dad split up, and when I was in second grade, we moved to Vermont. And just the things that she always did to support me, and that coaching was instilled in me probably before I even knew it. And I kind of just always took that. And after she got done coaching, she ended up being an educator, and for an there was an adult diploma program. So the people in Vermont, if you didn't graduate from high school, you could go through this program and actually get your real diploma from your high school. And so she helped hundreds and hundreds of people, get their actual diploma, from people from 18 to 80 years old. And just, again, it's that selfless servant leadership. She's been a huge reason that I think I do what I do, and look up
Well,
to her
that's awesome,
still.
man. And listen, it's been an hour, and that's kind of where we try to cap it. I've really, really looked up to you for a long time. Probably haven't done a good enough job to let you know just how much I really appreciate you and appreciate what you do within the field of strength and conditioning. But it's been an honor, man. I really hope to grow this relationship and get to know you even better on a personal level. But I thank you for taking the time out today and talking with us, and look forward to seeing you at Summer Strong.
Yeah, thanks, man. No, I really appreciate the kind words, and it's been great getting to know you. And the good side of social media is I love being able to check in on what you're up to, or see you
Yeah,
back skiing, and see some music selections that we
right.
both and being able to say what's up. And that part of, like, the social media thing is such a cool thing to me. So it's been great kind of
For
getting to
sure.
know you
Well,
more,
and
and definitely
I
look
tell
forward
you,
to
today
furthering it.
is I posted about it earlier, but today's 3 year anniversary of kind of hitting an all time low as a man, and I just tell you, throughout the row and throughout many things, you continued to be a person that messaged me really when you didn't have to, and just want to say thanks. So I really appreciate you, man. All right, brother.
Thanks,
Well,
appreciate it.
that is it for this episode of Be Legendary. Check out Scott Caulfield. He's one of the best in the business, and he's doing it at a high level. So we'll see you guys next week. As always, stay strong, love yourself, and love somebody. Be legendary.